Now, next up, we've got an amazing talk about pencils. And I'm going to let Sian explain what she means by that. So please welcome our Director of Research, Sian Townsend.
So thanks for joining us tonight. So I wanted to give you an insight into just how powerful sketch research can be at helping you get inside the minds of your users. So when you think about the field that we work in, you think about product design, and you think about the role that sketching plays. You probably think about a designer sketching away, and they're constructing new ideas. And that's great. That's a well-established thing, and sketching is fantastic for that. But something that's often really overlooked is the power of sketching to help deconstruct ideas and deconstruct the way that people think about things. And the way that people think something works is more commonly known as their mental model. And so what I want to talk about is just how powerful sketching is at helping you get inside someone's head. And as a product researcher, that's what my whole job is all about, getting inside people's heads. So that's why I'm so excited by this technique. And it turns out that psychologists have used this technique for many years to get people to sketch, and they use that as a window into people's minds. In 1948, for example, this test called the house tree person test was developed. And it's a way of assessing intellectual ability. And it can be used for kids as young as 3 to try and peer inside their mind and see how they think. And this is some of the sketches that I did of my family earlier. On a much more serious note, this is a sketch by a child who's a Syrian refugee. And you can see there's a lot going on in this picture, even though it's kind of simple and rough. You can see a child's got a gun to their head, you can see bombs dropping, you can see people on the floor with blood. And it's quite possible that this picture is actually communicating something that was beyond the language of this child. But even this simple picture is conveying this huge amount of information, and it's used by therapists with refugees. So just to back up a bit, you're probably wondering how the heck does all this relate to digital product design? Well, I think it's really important because if you can understand what's inside someone's mind, then you're going to be able to actually design better products for them. And so I know that in the audience tonight, we've got people from very, very different companies. So what I tried to do is think about different buckets that can help you think about how sketch researching can help you. So I think there are really 4 main types of product that sketch research is useful for. So one of them is anything maps related. So anything with a spatial element where you want to understand how people move around physical space and how they relate to their environment. Second would be products that have a social element. So if you want to understand people and how people think about relationships between people in a system, sketching is great. Third, I think any product that involves a sequence of steps, then sketching is going to be useful for that as well. And finally, if you work on something really complex, like perhaps genetic testing or something really hellish like American healthcare, then this is going to be the technique for you. So I wanted to make things more concrete, and I'm going to give you 3 specific examples of how I've used sketch research and others at Intercom have used it as well. So the first is an example from 2008 when I was working at Google, and I was leading research to understand how people wanted to use new local mobile search services. And the iPhone hadn't been out very long back then, and so it's easy to forget just how different things were. And there were all these assumptions being made by engineers, product managers at Google around this notion that people were just going to be interested in this perfect sphere around them, wherever they were. And so I wanted to do some research to kind of test out this hypothesis. So I did a very simple thing, and that was I got people in a research study to draw a map of their typical week. And I got very, very varied sketches, but essentially what we saw was this kind of pattern where people would illustrate their home and then their work, and then around those spheres of interest, there would be this cluster of places that they typically went to again and again, and they were interested in finding out more about. One thing started to emerge, and that was this really interesting pattern, which we called the dog bone. So you can see that there were these zones at either end of the dog bone where people really wanted to learn more about new places there or retrieve information about places they knew. And then they were less interested in the area around. So this kind of blew this notion of the perfect sphere out of the water, and instead what we saw was people being much more interested in this very specialized area, very specific pattern. And you can see that this is now translated into various features that Google offer. So for example, now you can save home and work locations. This allows you to get directions to home or work with just a few clicks. And you also see that Google understood then from the research that people actually want to retrieve information about places that they go to a lot. So perhaps if I've been searching for Jane recently, then that's going to appear in my search history first. So this probably seems really obvious now, right? But it really wasn't obvious at the time. And what's remarkable is when I look back at these projects, you can see that sketching actually got to the essence of something so efficiently. And that's why I think it's really such a powerful technique. Second example, so Paul Adams, who you'll hear from later, he was also a researcher at Google around the same time, and he wanted to understand how people thought about their friend groups, because he was working on social products. And so what he did was also very simple, but very powerful, and he got someone to draw themselves in the middle of a piece of paper, and then draw their closest friends around them, and then they could lay out their other friends any way they liked after that. But then they had to explain back to him how they'd grouped all these different people. At the time, the model that Facebook was using was this idea that your friends are just one homogeneous mass, right? Everyone was equal. But of course, that wasn't the case, and this research proved very quickly and illustrated very beautifully that people actually have very different friendship groups. And the way they communicate with them is also very different. This had a number of immediate product impacts. So Facebook actually learned about this research, and they went ahead and changed their groups product immediately. And then Google came out with Google Circles. So final case study, Intercom. So we pride ourselves on trying to produce the simplest product possible at the front end. But at the back end, that means there's a huge amount of complexity in the system. And so one of the things we noticed was that internally, people weren't all using the same language to talk about our product. This was causing a little bit of confusion, so we thought, we'll get everyone to draw a map of how they describe Intercom. So it was such a simple exercise, but it was really, really valuable. So we got our coworkers to sit down with a pen and some paper and just scribble out how they describe Intercom. It was fascinating because we got these incredibly different diagrams. And we also learned that people were using really different terminology for the same thing. These pictures were a catalyst to us actually deciding, okay, we need to get on the same page. We need to create a clear system model. And that's what we're working on now. And we're using that to onboard our new employees so that everyone's really clear about this system that they're working on. And it will also help improve our marketing as well. So just to wrap things up, this is what I'd love you to take away from this talk. So sketch research is an incredibly powerful technique, and it's really overlooked. It'll help you understand different products, from spatial products to time-based products, complex systems. And no one's really doing it right now or really talking about it. There's very little literature around this. So it could give you a competitive advantage if you try it out. So yeah, finally, I suggest you go and try it for yourself, and we'd love to hear how it goes. So thank you.